Florida lawmakers passed sweeping changes meant to stabilize the insurance market in the state and reverse the spiraling cost of property insurance. Governor signed those bills on Friday.
The plan addresses the cost of lawsuits and the cost of reinsurance for insurance companies, with the hope a stabilized market will trickle down and lower costs for consumers. Opponents say hope does not pay the bills. So let's take a dive into those details with two South Florida state reps who lived it all this week. Tom Fabricio, Republican representing Miami Lakes and Northwest Miami-Dade, and Hillary Cassell, newly elected Democrat representing Davie and Hollywood, Hallandale Beach, Dania Beach. To both of you, good morning. This is so dense, and we are counting on you to sort of detail things for us. Tom, if we can start with you. This was a Republican bill passed by party lines, supermajority, and the biggest criticism is not necessarily, well, there was criticism of the components, but the biggest criticism was that there is nothing to immediately help people struggling to pay the bills. Why not?
Good morning, Glenn and Michael. And Michael, congratulations on your retirement. I'll mention it later, but you are from the era of my father in journalism here in South Florida, and you certainly will be missed. We don't always agree, but I appreciate your service to our community.
Thank you, sir.
With regard to the bill, this is we are in a massive insurance crisis, and this crisis has been long coming. In 2021, we had approximately 116,000 cases in litigation filed in this state as compared to what we've been seeing in the other 49 states. So it's a dramatic problem. The problem that we're trying to solve and the problem that was solved with this legislation will allow us to continue moving forward and will allow the insurance market to not fully collapse and put everyone into citizens. That's a big deal. And that talks about how bad things really are.
Yeah. So let me jump in, Tom, if I can. You're absolutely right. Nobody wanted the insurance market to collapse. But Hillary Cassell, it seems like the prime beneficiary of what the legislature did was to prop up all the insurance companies, give them what, $1 billion in a reinsurance fund? They really were the big winners in this deal.
I couldn't agree with you more, Michael. You know, the reality is, in a period from May until now, December, the Republican legislature has given insurance industries $3 billion in bailout at the backs and on the backs of consumers. This bill really eroded any availability for a consumer to hold an insurance company accountable in the event that they have a claim and the insurance company doesn't do right by them, all while giving them a $3 billion bailout when, quite frankly, when you actually look at the reinsurance program put forth, it doesn't provide everything that the reinsurance and the rating agencies are going to require. So once again, the bailout isn't going to be sufficient to stabilize the reinsurance market, which everybody agrees, regardless of the side of the aisle you're on, that reinsurance is probably the biggest issue facing Floridians in this crisis because it accounts for 49% of what people are paying in their premiums.
Well, it's a two-part issue. Part one has to do with the fact that the reason why reinsurance carriers, by and large, are having trouble with providing and placing reinsurance in Florida has to do with the gross amount of litigation that we have in Florida. 116,000 cases that we had in Florida in 2021 versus about 1,000 in each other state. It's a huge problem, and it's actually shameful that we have that much litigation in Florida. Part two of the problem has to do with the fact that law in Florida requires that when we enter into a contract, those terms and the laws that affected that contract stay in place. So the fact that we're going ahead and we've made these monumental changes, which are going to provide massive consumer relief in the future. The fact is that because of these two hurricanes that took place this year, and because of the Irma tail that we're still experiencing, that litigation will remain in place. Unfortunately, we just can't end that litigation, but we can change the laws going forward, and that's what we've done.
Yeah, Hillary Cassell, as you know better than almost anyone, one of the really big problems with property insurance in the state was the policy that allowed a plaintiff to sue an insurance company if they thought their settlement was insufficient. And if they won, then the insurance company had to pay the legal fees of the homeowner. Now, did that just go away? Isn't that what part of what happened in these bills?
So that actually went away after the passing of Senate Bill 76, when there was an institution of what's called a notice of intent to initiate litigation. And there was a whole revision of the attorney's fee structure that put it into a percentages, almost like a prevailing party, that if you were asking too much or demanding too much and you didn't get it, you could be on the hook for the insurance company's fees. Sadly, we didn't let those reforms go into effect. And now what we've done is say all policyholders are responsible for paying their own attorney's fees. Well, when insurance companies wrongfully deny and underpay claims, which sadly they do, and that's a part of this equation that the legislature hasn't looked into and has not forced OIR, our now former insurance commissioner, to look at. And we've never really looked under the hood as to why there's so much litigation. But yes, you're completely right. Now this bill completely strips away an insured's right for holding insurance companies accountable when they wrongfully deny and underpay claims. Now they're going to be out of pocket, which means they're never going to have enough money to fix their homes.
So Tom,
And
can
Michael,
you...
I apologize, but she's shifting the issue. Your question had to do with will those attorney's fees go away immediately? My response previously was that yes, going forward, they'll go away, but for all the pending litigation and for all the litigation that's forthcoming as a result of Hurricane Ian and Nicole and the still pending litigation out of Hurricane Irma, those fees don't go away. And that's a large reason why these reinsurance carriers are staying away from Florida for the foreseeable future. That's why we're not seeing premiums come down immediately.
Okay, point well taken. But in the longer term and with the structural changes, address how a homeowner can now, in the long term, and when this all happens, how can a homeowner afford to file what might be a very legitimate claim against his or her insurer? How does that help the homeowner get whole against an insurer without that kind of financial balance?
Glenda, that's a great question. In the American system for attorney's fees are that each party pays their own attorney's fees. And in the personal injury realm here in Florida, generally contingency agreements are entered into between lawyers and their clients where the attorney will be able to receive a portion, usually between 33 and 40% of what that attorney is able to get for that in that litigation. The problem we've been having here with the one-way fees is that it's only one way. There's no risk that the attorney and the plaintiff filing that lawsuit is going to have to cover fees if they are wrong. Number one. That's one of the reasons why this was taken out. And number two, this doesn't change the fact that there still are proposal for settlement rules, offers of judgments, and other elements under Chapter 57 that will allow recovery of fees in egregious situations. And bad faith still remains at play if the plaintiff is able to prove that there was a breach of contract.
Yeah. Hillary, the legislature, you and your fellow legislators, took some real action to try to pare down the number of people who are insured through Citizens Insurance, the state-owned company, the insurer of last resort, allegedly. 1.1 million people have policies there. But one of the things that you all did, maybe you didn't like this, was to require every Citizens policy holder to get flood insurance. Well, for example, I live on the 22nd floor of a condominium. I don't live in a flood zone, but if Citizens were my insurer, I'd still have to pay for flood insurance. Where's the fairness there?
You know, there isn't fairness. You know, the reality is the Citizens component of this bill actually raises rates so they eventually will be more expensive than the private marketplace. The Citizens component also now requires mandatory flood insurance. And the reality is, with no guarantee that rates are going to go down, people already can't afford just property insurance. Now they're being mandated to get flood. And just like you said, Michael, in your situation, when you don't really need it. So the citizens component of this bill really is harmful to especially those constituents and those residents in South Florida who more likely than not will still have citizens as their only option. But that's what happens when you rush legislation through, when you don't take time to listen to all stakeholders that might have ideas or different solutions, then raising people's rates, no guarantee of bringing them down, taking all resources available to hold their insurance companies accountable, and now making it mandatory that they carry insurance when the federal government may not require them to.
A lot of the talk over the 48 hours that this was going through was the insane amount of fraud in the insurance industry. We in the news business know that is absolutely a fact. So, Tom, now that one of the things to sort of mitigate the fraud was taking away the assignment of benefits, AOB, insurance companies can no longer be paying contractors directly, circumventing the homeowners. But I guess people want to know, if there's so much fraud, why isn't anybody being held accountable for the fraud that's going on right now, be it contractors, be it insurance companies, be it any part of that layered process? Where is the consequence and accountability for that now?
Well, I've spoken with our CFO, Jimmy Petronis, and he assures me that the different agencies under the CFO's realm are taking charge of that and making sure that they are seeking to bring all folks that are defrauding to the law. But one thing that I got to mention with regard to citizens and the flood policies, the flood policy requirement is going to be phased in, and it will be fully phased in pursuant to this bill by 2027. So it is not an immediate effect. It is for current citizens policyholders to be phased in, and we definitely expect that by 2027, the insurance market will be fully balanced at that point. And the point here is that Citizens is an insurer of last resort, and it should be. And if a person doesn't want to apply, doesn't want to have to conform to the Citizens requirements, they should be able to avail themselves of the private market.
Yeah. Tom, let me ask you, we all know that money is the mother's milk of politics. And there's a lot of money from the insurance industry that has been contributed to lawmakers. One report I saw said $15.6 million was given out to state legislators in the 2022 election cycle. And all I can say is it looks like the insurance companies got a good return on their investment.
Michael, I'd say that the trial bar and FJA is also funding and passing out the checks just as well. And I imagine that Hillary Cassell, who is a member of the trial bar, is the beneficiary of that.
Hillary, even the governor this week said that come spring session, there will likely be more on the plate for the lawmakers to possibly give homeowners a bit more relief on property insurance. The Democrats, more than a dozen amendments in both sides of the chambers, none made it here. Do you foresee, or maybe you and the caucus are already writing bills that you'll try to get in for spring session about this?
Absolutely. And the Democrats put forth a plan that would have allowed the insurance market to stabilize, and it would have been affordable, available, and accountable for consumers. And none of that was taken up. I think one of the things that we haven't spoken about is the absolute lack of transparency from the Office of Insurance Regulation. And it's not a coincidence that less than 24 hours after we gavelled out of special session, that our insurance commissioner resigned after he delivered what I believe to be the insurance industry's holiday wish list of reforms. Everything that comes at the back of consumers does not lower their rates, no guarantee that their rates will ever be lowered, and simply gives insurance companies the ability to take premiums and never have to pay claims and have people available to hold them accountable.
We understand, and there remains a lot of work to be done by you too, Hillary Cassell, Tom Fabricio. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Appreciate it.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, and best of luck, Michael. Congratulations on an amazing career.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.